how to know if it's a good fit for you, I would get at that poem and say, think about this, be critical, be thoughtful, be concerned. Don't fall in love with the next person who smiles at you.
Right.
And so that poem has lots of great lines about how things that look good at the beginning, each line is a turn where it becomes a negative.
Gotcha.
So beware the man who loves to cook. He'll fill your kitchen with dirty pots and pans. That kind of thing. But there are others. And sometimes people bring their poems. I mean, I don't ask generally people to write poems, but they will. I will encourage them to write.
Okay.
And then occasionally they will bring their writing will take the form of a poem, and that is especially when it's heartfelt. Sometimes gets us closer to an issue that needs to be looked at. So we can understand what's happening here, what part of that person is making the decision in the moment, and how do we address that?
Yeah.
So it's like John Bradshaw would say, the child is driving the bus, and needs to be taken away from the bus and put safely where they can have fun in a seat.
Gotcha.
So.
Yeah. So 2 questions, maybe 2 related questions. Going back a little bit, when we were talking about the writing process, I'm curious what your writing process is like, 1, and 2, did you ever, in your own personal life, your personal practice, not necessarily in your therapy work, but in your personal therapy work, did you ever use writing as a tool? And is that at all related to your writing process now?
Okay, so for my personal therapy, generally, if there was something I wanted to remember, I would write it out afterward in my notebook, or it was before we had phones. But I would make sure that there were certain things I wanted to spend some time thinking about. I would do it if I was running, if I was maybe waiting for a class to begin, or sitting in my office in graduate school. I'd make sure that I had these notes. And when we got Post-its, then Post-its all over the place.
Post-its everywhere.
Right. And so these days I try to schedule time to write, but I don't like to do it at home because there are too many distractions. It's like I'd like to be at the university library on the 5th floor, which is a quiet space, and just get rid of the phone.
Yeah.
And I think lots of writers talk about this. Get rid of the screens. Although I generally write on screens, I write on my computer for the most part. Okay. And then I will just, if there's no poem, like I have a poem that I've been thinking about, I've been trying to capture a poem about what countertransference as a therapeutic tool for the therapist is. And so I go make some notes about that, or I'll think of a quote that I remember, or something a prop said, or a supervisor, and I'll add that to it, and then I'll try to get it all on a page. And then once I have something that looks like a poem, then I put it in Word, and every time I have a new draft, I add the page with the date. So
you're not losing what you had before.
Right.
I think that's a wise.
Because sometimes what you had before was better.
Right.
You mess it up with a new idea.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good thinking. Yeah. Shall we have you read another poem?
Sure. This one is from the middle section of the book, and it's called Born from Our December. Our cold breaths make words freeze and shatter between us. The cold window shines white frost from the ice moon. I want to walk into the winter wooded yard, lie down between the trees and shrubs, let the roots and dirt enfold me to take me from this life. Maybe in spring, something she can love will grow.
Is there anything you'd like to say about that poem? It's really beautiful.
It comes from a particular argument on a particular winter night,
Okay.
and it felt very cold out.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
so it just hit to one of my childhood things,
Okay.
and it just stuck with me for a while. So it was because it was particularly deep. So I thought,
Yeah. It says a lot in a few words.
Right.
Yeah. Can I show the shape of this to the camera?
Sure.
So I don't know if that's, but I just want to like show this shape of the diminishing poem because I really like the visual of that, as well as the kind of that sinking into the earth, and becoming compost before you grow into blossom into something beautiful.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to quickly look at my notes here. We've been talking about quite a few things. I'm curious with this book. Who do you think the book is for? And sometimes we don't know, right? Sometimes we don't know. Sometimes it's just a matter of putting it out there because we feel drawn to put it out there. But just considering kind of this weaving together you're doing of therapy and poetry, do you feel like there's a particular audience for this book?
Well, I think my psychologist colleagues, my psychotherapist colleagues, will find it interesting because they do, and their encouragement, maybe as much as anything, is part of what kept me going.
Okay.
Now the problem is when I started showing these drafts about psychotherapy to other people, English majors, they didn't understand them.
Yes.
So then the question of not appreciating or knowing or being familiar with the context, I started putting in explanation, and so then it would be too much explanation. And so it's finding, for a lot of those, like what I call professional poems, it's about finding the right level of explication of the process. Here's the setting. Might not have been in touch with reality, or might have been drugged or something, but somehow didn't recognize they were pregnant until the baby came, and with tragic consequences. And one of my colleagues suddenly said, "Oh my God," and remembered this time, which is described in the poem, and took us back to that moment when she realized that that blood clot was something more, that when she was 16 and it went down the shower. And so I was so moved by that. I wrote this poem and brought it in next month to our meeting, and she was very touched and read it to the group and gave me permission to use the poem.
And do you want to read that poem? Is that one?
Sure, let me see. It'll be easier when you get the real book. Now, did it end up? Maybe it didn't end up here.
Okay, we can cut that part.
Yeah,
Cut my
I
question.
think unfortunately it didn't end up in this version. But so you'll have to wait for the next. collection.
Next collection, coming out in
Right.
2026.
Well,
I don't know.
maybe that'll be part of my master's thesis, we'll see.
There you
Okay.
go, there you go. Well,
So-
go ahead.
So, and you had a question about, or there are just a few poems here that come out of specific therapeutic interactions.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit.
And,
Do you want to read one of them?
sure. This is called The Privilege. A family member called to cancel the appointment. My patient was lost in an abyss of darkness, lying unconscious in a distant city, dying. Her urgent need helped me overcome my shock and helplessness at the news. We had worked so hard to heal such near-deadly wounds that bound her at the stakes of childhood brutality. There must be something I could do to overcome the indignity of life's new assault against her. Could she not have a moment of comfort to be at ease? The ICU doctor answered my call and said there was nothing else he could do. Her husband and children on a plane, expecting to be too late. There was only enough O2 getting through to keep her brain alive for a short time. Doctor, you may think this weird, but would you put the phone to her ear? He replied, at this point, I'll try anything, and ran a line to her pillow. The one-sided conversation reached into her life, asking her to choose it with all its pain, with her children, the hard struggle to heal, anchoring memories lived in our shared years, desperate, reaching for moments of innocent light. Perhaps I was there, perhaps among the pulsing screens, beeping machines, IV poles, and tubes of precious air, there in that white automated room 2,000 miles away. 20 minutes later, someone picked up the phone. Something had changed. The pulse of life was quickening, oxygen-piercing inflammation being metabolized. In the chart, a change of heart was noted. They put the phone back to her ear for an hour, and she breathed stronger. I put down the phone, shaking. So this something, and I just have a note from the patient who's still alive, and this is 25 years later. It was written, I guess this was written about 12 years ago.
Okay.
And
Which is considerable time after the actual.
yeah,
Okay.
it's about 13, 14 years after.
Okay.
When the poem took shape and I thought that I might submit it for publication, I called her and said, you know, I wrote this poem. Is that can I send it to you and let me know what you think? And she was touched by the poem, and then we talked about. I said I would like to submit it for publication. And she said that would be great, and I said, can I send you a release form and a consent form? So the consent says, the contract says, I will inform her of any new submissions and any changes in the poem, so that she could retract that if she wanted it.
Okay.
And so in January, when I was getting the manuscript together, I reaffirmed that, and she wrote back and said, yes, and
Okay.
this is what happened, and thank you.
Yeah, and I'm assuming, you know, that she still remains anonymous.
Right, right.
No
Yep.
revealing details or ever sharing.
Right.
Yeah, I would imagine that you have to really think about the ethics of sharing your
Right.
work coming from this field of really deep privacy, necessarily so, into this world of poetry where the intention is for it to be shared universally. What are the ethics? Where's the line for you that it's okay to cross or not?
Yeah, and at the point that the intention becomes to share the poem, it becomes, I don't want to say selfish in a negative act, but it's a self-serving act. It may or may not serve the ex-patient.
Right.
But it's something that I'm doing, and I need their permission to do it.
Right.
He requested to be acknowledged, and absolutely.
Nice. So that's more of a collaborative.
Right. So this is, that these are the two most intense poems where I needed to get permission, and the others are, for instance, a new patient appointment about the man with the gun that happened when I was a very young therapist. That is a composite.
Okay.
And of different situations in different moments, and that most of us have to face as therapists.
Right.
So we have to learn to deal with them, and that fortunately worked out.
Yeah. Do you feel like writing poetry helps you kind of process all that you've been through in your career and with your
I think it does. I think more so with the autobiographical poems, the childhood stuff. Some of the more raw incidents didn't make it into this collection, but I think it kind of helps with the narrative. I mean, we know as therapists, if we get the narrative, if we get the new narrative with the new understanding set out, that it's easier to follow through and to follow the narrative. And it's the same thing with the narrative arc of a poem, a book, a novel, or the narrative arc of the collection, which and this is basically chronological. This collection is organized.
Okay. Maybe you could read. Did I write one down? I'm thinking of one from your childhood, and I thought I had written it down. Maybe it's the one with the gang. I don't have it written here. I thought it was.
With my grandfather's buddies?
Yeah, let's read that one. That's kind of a fun one.
Sure. One with the gang. Orange soda in 2 draft beer glasses. Condensation drips down to moisten the round white bar coasters. My brother and I sit on tall stools at the short end of the bar. It's Saturday morning. Grandpa, with the guys of his age, sit down the long edge of the bar, reaching back into the dark of the room. They laugh and joke, free from the monitor of wives and bosses, more careful of their language with young boys in earshot. These ancient men survived 2 wars and have earned their weekend freedoms while wives are home or grocery shopping. Our feet barely reach the bar stool rungs. Early sunlight warms our backs through the neon display. East End tap room, open. Young boys playing at a kind of manhood. We were included on the edge of the gang. The bartender's rules allow us, even if New Jersey law says otherwise. We are learning the ways of men.
That's a great poem. That really paints the picture, doesn't it, of the boys, in the bar, learning from their
I just had a okay, I was trying to think of the word, but I'll go with goosebumps. but I have lost for the moment the technical term.
We don't need to be technical. Goosebumps works.
Anyway, I remember that morning. That it was one of 2 or 3 maybe that he took us there, and the setting in Dover, New Jersey, across the street from the Rockaway River.
Yeah,
So-
that's great. That's great.
More at school, having to be careful.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think maybe that was it, that I just remember moments. I have memories going back to early childhood, 2.5, and
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, okay. So the book is titled A Memoir, or subtitled A Memoir in Strophe, and I'm wondering why did you choose to write a memoir as poetry as opposed to prose?
I just started writing poetry, and kind of the book ended up. You know, and because I was writing.
While we connect you.
I was writing about experiences. I have a lot of love poems, but not all of them are very good. That I would want to try to put together. But the idea of just eventually, I had enough poems. I was walking around, and I had a book full of them. And then I needed to learn how to make them better, so I would say that the idea of writing a book about poems and therapy came about 10 years ago, and then I put the autobiographical poems and a couple of the love poems in the middle section. So when the psychologist returns to therapy, that's the beginning of the psychosocial history, the second part of the book, and that starts with the autobiographical poems, and then we go back to the office at the end of the book.
I see. So the structure of the book is built around your experience as a therapist.
Right.
Got it.
And then my experience as a patient in therapy. Which
That's interesting. So the book kind of gives both sides of the therapy, both you as a therapist and you as a patient.
Right.
So
So-
all right. Well, you mentioned a love poem. You mentioned love poems, and there was one that I found really tender. Let's see, Autumn Warmth. Autumn Warmth. Maybe we could finish with that one.
Okay. Okay. Autumn warmth. Drifting through shadows as fall leaves flutter, late morning light only sensed through night crew fog. A slow warmth awakens my awareness as softness invites me into the presence of leaves in the early afternoon. Somewhere in the day she decided to share this gift, make a surprise of herself, and travel to my room's soft light. How leaf shadows waved to her, shading her skin, leopard revealed as she slid, slender, deep under my pale blue comforter. No longer only her first, I have become her familiar lover. She reaches under my arm to palm my beating heart. Some courage of her desire proved the growing newness, now moved me to wordlessness.
Thank you for sharing that one. Is there anything else that you would like to highlight in the book, or things we didn't get to that you might want to mention?
No, I don't think so. I think the question of what might be learned about psychotherapy as people who are curious about it, considering it, or considering it as a possible profession to go into, learn about. So the humanness of it, like the humanness of poetry, and that ability to communicate metaphor, I think that's what makes them similar.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Amy, so much for being willing to work with me on this.
You are very welcome. Thank you for sharing your poems, and all the best luck to the book.
Thank you,
Look forward
and
to seeing it
you're
coming up.
next.